Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode we're taking a look at the Devil's Lore of Flame, the ability to burn stuff and control fires. I've been dreading this episode since I started the lore series, not because of its mechanical complexity and lengthy write-up, but because, for reasons you're about to see today, this lore completely misses the mark. It's not mechanically satisfying, it doesn't play into the house lore, it doesn't give players the ability to create awesome, creative, distinct interactions with the game world, instead being situational at best and, at worst, it is an obvious fact and abomination, to quote Jack Sparrow. I know I usually start off with the history and significance of the lore in the context of the setting and the history of the Fallen, but in this case I'll get right to the mechanics and detail those things later precisely so you can see how badly whoever wrote these evocations understood the idea of flame. Fuel. The Devil's command of flames allows her to fuel existing fires with the power of her faith, turning a simple source of heat into a raging inferno with a thought. System. Roll stamina plus survival. If there is a source of fire or heat within a number of yards equal to her faith score, the devil can increase its size by 1 square foot per success. Torment. Monstrous devils fuel the strength of an existing blaze rather than its dimensions. Each success increases the fire's lethal damage rating by 1. For more details on fire and its effects, see page 263 of the Systems chapter. I'll let you see that one for yourselves. Okay, so at this level, the devil can increase either the size of a pre-existing fire as a low torment ability, or the intensity or temperature of this fire as a high torment ability. Given that said devil cannot truly control fire since they're only making it spread further and probably do more harm, there really is no distinction between the low torment form and the high torment version when it comes to what they are used for. Both are used for destruction, for setting the world on fire. Furthermore, we're not told anything about duration. If the size and intensity of the fire increase, then I'm imagining it consumes more material quicker, so it dies out faster, or it spreads out of control and burns down the whole house. Either way, I'm not seeing how this effect can be used without the character subsequently acquiring torment for destroying parts of creation that probably really matter to mortals. Sure, maybe this evocation and the following one might come in handy when the character is out camping or lost in the woods, but that makes it situational at best. If we compare this one to the first dot evocations of the other lores, like the Lore of Death or the Lore of the Forge, or other elemental powers such as Lore of the Earth or the Lore of Storms, we immediately see this one is woefully lacking. But let's move on to the next dot because there's a lot to say afterward. Ignite. A devil's mastery over fire as a fundamental force of creation allows him to inspire its existence at will. System. Roll stamina plus survival. This evocation allows the devil to cause flammable objects to burst into flame. The character may attempt to ignite any object within a number of yards equal to her faith score, and must obtain a number of successes in excess of the target's resistance to combustion. Gasoline, gunpowder, or other explosive material might have a resistance of 1. Dry flammable objects like wood or paper might have a resistance of 2. Inert metal might be rated 5. Water and strictly non-flammable materials cannot be ignited with this power. Fires ignited in this fashion are no more intense than natural flame, and they inflict damage accordingly. Torment. Monstrous devils are too fueled by hatred to perform this evocation with precision. All flammable objects within a radius in yards equal to the character's faith score are affected. A single evocation roll is made, with some materials igniting and others remaining unaffected based on successes rolled. Alright, this is where I want to get into the importance and true significance of this lore to show how botched this write-up is. So this power says flammable objects burst into flames, they are no more intense than natural fire, and they consume the object which is set ablaze. Thus fire is written in as this consuming force, right? It burns for a while, goes out, converts things into ash as it rages on. No, this is completely wrong. I take you back to those initial moments in creation which very few fallen remember, and if anyone does, it is those of the flames, because the very first thing that was ever brought into being to separate the giver from the abyss was flame. Before there were other houses to lead and coordinate, before the lore of celestials or anything of the like, the giver created its first heralds and said, "Please separate me from this nothingness." And the heralds burst into flame, becoming the antithesis of the abyss, generating immeasurably intense light and heat without burning out, because they were not burning to begin with. What the devil's command is not fire. It's not a mundane chemical reaction which changes the materials exposed, consuming them in the process. The heralds lit up in a time before time in which physical matter hadn't even been conceived yet. Their flame is not physical. It is a manifestation of the giver's will to fully, eternally separate from nothingness, radiating a light and warmth which makes the void retreat. The void cannot not exist in that presence anymore, and as such it is banished as nothingness. It becomes something. That flame is the giver's first scream of fully acknowledging its own existence. It is the "I am" she spits in the face of the abyss, and the heralds are not consumers of her energy but conduits. Conduits which promise that faith will radiate and reach every corner of the giver's presence. It will vascularize or irrigate the entirety of her form with light and warmth. The concept of the giver and the concept of being is born when this flame ignites. And then other spirits will be brought into being, which will fully awaken even more spirits, which will create the world according to the giver's will. And certainly, at a certain point, the heralds also fell, and their flame became corrupted. It became ephemeral, greedy, consuming. But this doesn't change the fact that there is a clear distinction between divine flame, flame capital F, and the mundane chemical fire of the third house, which is a distinction whoever wrote these evocations wasn't aware of. In both Houses of the Fallen and the Player's Guide, we are told the Celestials of the Flame conceptualized and embodied light, but gave control over that light to those of the spheres, the fiends. They embody heat and share it with those of the earth during their own labor. We are told the heralds created the blueprints for lightning, but gave control over that element to those of the deeps. As we can see, the flame as a concept is the energy which powers all of creation. It transfers to others. It can be shaped into things. It has multiple parameters, even beyond the ones mortal know as light, heat, etc. Compared to that amazing glory, being able to ignite a puddle of gasoline or even a sword is nothing. It shouldn't be the purpose of a whole evocation. because this is the devil's playground. This is their area of expertise. They are some of the few who remember and know there really is no spoon here for those who have seen and enjoyed The Matrix. What is igniting isn't the physical material, but the underlying flux of faith, what mages call quintessence, that which permeates and sustains everything that is in existence. And yes, fire, as a lesser version of flame, capital F, does consume and rage out of control and so on. But flame can do and should have done a lot more. But I'll share my own ideas at a later time. Next dot. Command the flame. The devil's mastery of flame allows her to direct the fire by the force of her will. The blaze swells, shrinks, moves, and consumes all that she commands. System. Roll wits plus survival and total the number of successes achieved. The successes form a pool that you use in subsequent turns to control the progress of the fire. Rolls to control fire are made against a difficulty of 8, although that may increase depending on circumstances such as active sprinklers and fire retardant materials at the storyteller's discretion. Successes generated by the roll allow your character to cause the fire to grow by 1 square foot per success, shrink by the same amount, or spread in a specific direction up to a yard per success. The player may add to this pool with subsequent wits plus survival rolls on successive turns, if desired, but the pool can never exceed the character's permanent faith rating. If at any time you fail to roll any successes, the fire burns out of control for that turn. If a roll botches, control is lost completely. Torment. High torment devils have less facility in controlling fire's movements, but their rage increases the flame's intensity. A monstrous demon's control pool is halved, rounded up, for all actions, with the remaining dice added as damage levels to the harm that the fire is capable of inflicting. Finally, an evocation I like. This one offers so much more narrative and mechanical potential than the previous two, because a character can use this one for more than just destruction. They can use this one to control a fire, swelling or shrinking that blaze, deciding how much of the flammable materials the fire gets to consume like a good little pet, and this can be useful in a variety of situations, benevolent or malevolent. The character might save someone from a burning building by literally commanding the fire into submission, into bowing its flaming head as the protagonist enters the building like a ruler, a proper king of fire. Or they might burn someone's face off by manipulating the internal combustion of a car engine, or even that of a bullet when someone squeezes the trigger. I think this evocation might have been better as a second dot, with Ignite being first, but I'm not sure. We'll get to that soon. Next dot. Holocaust. This evocation is the ultimate expression of the power of fire. It consumes in order to make way for new life by transforming divine energy into cleansing flames. System. Spend 1 faith point and roll stamina plus survival. Although your dice pool for the roll cannot exceed the target's faith pool, your demon must physically touch her intended target to perform this evocation. Each success inflicts 1 level of aggravated damage, or lethal if the victim does not deal in aggravated damage, to the target and consumes 1 point of the target's temporary faith. This form of attack can be used on inanimate objects as well. Most physical matter has no more than 1 point of faith suffusing its physical being, though especially sacred objects may have considerably more. Physical objects burned this way are reduced to ashes when all of their inherent faith is consumed. Objects, therefore, burn much quicker than normal. Torment. Monstrous demons delight in feeding the cosmos to the flames. Roll your full dice pool, although damage levels inflicted in excess of the target's available faith are taken from your own character's faith pool. Additionally, if the evocation causes more damage than the target is capable of sustaining, the remaining aggravated levels of damage are suffered by your devil, as she loses her focus in the ecstasy of destruction. A very interesting idea, but again, poorly implemented. Like I said before, I love this idea of devil as a conduit of divine energy. So burning through another's faith, and I would go even further and say leeching, redirecting, overall, being able to control and transfer faith with a touch is very useful and thematically appropriate to have here. The lore of the Celestials allows a herald to enhance another's evocations or even to hijack them entirely, so this evocation of the lore of Flame allows one to control or outright consume another's faith. Very nice. The aggravated damage part also makes sense, and we can see the lore of the Celestials borrowing from this evocation here because Flame was first, and in this case that burning, that consumption which deals aggravated damage, is not a consumption of physical material, but of the very essence and energy of it, which is why it's not just lethal to mortals, as fire damage often is, but aggravated to everyone, vampires, werewolves, etc. Or at least it should be, because the description says if the target doesn't deal in aggravated damage, it's lethal. But why can the character using this evocation not separate these two effects? Why can they only destroy another's energy? And the high torment power is interesting as well, but say a tormented character with a poor faith rating but a huge evocation dice pool decides to burn a wooden statuette out of existence for personal reasons. That statuette represents something the character wants to leave behind and never see again. Not only do they spend faith as a part of the evocation, but they are forced to roll their full dice pool, as if taking all that aggravated damage isn't bad enough and risks literally sending the character back into the pit. They burn through their own stores of faith as well, and as such, they are unable to heal that damage, which leaves them with X degree burns, and they die. Like, how idiotic and poorly written is an ability which, when used on the most mundane of things, literally forces your character to commit suicide. The devils are not uncontrollable pyromaniacs despite their torment, and this evocation doesn't empower the player in any way as an awesome elemental ability should. So this one also misses the mark. Final dot. Ride the flames. By performing this potent evocation, a devil does not merely command the fire, she is the fire, transforming her physical body into flame and directing it by the power of her will. System: spend 1 faith point and roll stamina plus survival. A devil has 2 options when employing this power. She can either join her essence with an existing blaze or become a pillar of fire by converting her available faith. In either case, your demon's body literally transforms into flame, consuming her clothes and any possessions she carries. While becoming a pillar of fire means the flame occupies the same dimensions as the character's physical body, your demon can increase this area by 1 square foot for each additional faith point you spend. Once transformed, your devil is a formless mass that shifts size and shape according to her will. While in this state, you use your character's willpower pool rather than her normal attributes and abilities to perform any actions, splitting this pool for multiple actions as normal. She may effectively travel anywhere air can go, under doors, through crevices. If she lashes out at an opponent in combat, roll dice equal to her Torment score to determine damage. The fire of your character's body is unaffected by water or fire suppression technology, as it is fueled by faith instead of mere chemical reaction. The drawback to this condition is that the fire must be fed continually or it dies out. Each turn your character must devote some of her willpower pool to consuming flammable material. One success is sufficient. Failing that, her flame shrinks by 1 square foot at the end of the turn. The fire does not spread like normal fire. It remains a self-contained entity, leaving only charred remains of the matter it consumes. If the fire shrinks to less than 1 square foot, or you botch a willpower roll at any point, your character transforms back into her physical form. Torment. Monstrous demons are unable to fully realize the transformation into flame. These fallen become fiery, skeletal figures instead, their blackened bones wreathed with flame and howling their rage and pain with tongues of fire. High torment demons use their normal attributes and abilities to move, attack, or otherwise act in a given turn, but they cannot move with the speed or ease of a true mutable flame. Furthermore, their bodies are racked with agony. If they do not inflict at least 1 level of damage or combust 1 square foot of material per turn with a successful willpower roll, they suffer 1 level of lethal damage as the fire feeds upon their physical bodies. Oh, now it's fueled by faith instead of a mere chemical reaction, but the character using this evocation still needs to consume physical matter every single turn or be extinguished, thus completely destroying the reality they've worked so hard to conceive and conceptualize just so they can become fire. But oh, it's okay. They don't get any torment for literally burning people's houses down in the process. This is so dumb and self-contradicting. How is this entire lore not turning all devils into maddened, self-destructive earthbound? So poorly written. The idea is great though. Pillar of fire, tongues of flame, the living blaze which can travel around very quickly in ways that defies mortal understanding. Something which is completely immune to fire suppression technology. Great so far, but goes out if it runs out of, I don't know, couches to consume? Really? My frustration is over 9,000 here. Again, the first flame in creation is not fire. The sun doesn't really burn because there's no oxygen in space, and if there were, it would go out super quickly. What the sun is doing is thermonuclear fusion. All of the stars, created by malefactors and fiends alike, are a tribute to the light bringers. This is a flame that doesn't actually burn. Oh, and any successful use of this ability, high or low torment, leaves your character naked. So disappointing. Before I share a few ideas on how to make this lore work a little better, hopefully, let's take a look at the apocalyptic form next. Nusku, the Visage of the Flames. These demons reveal themselves in a blaze of yellow-orange light. Their skin glows with the seething brilliance of the sun, and their image shimmers like a mirage. Their eyes take on the color of burnished gold, and when angered, Nusku radiate palpable waves of heat. An angel's hair becomes a deep red or reddish gold and thickens into a leonine mane. Open flames flare brightly in their presence, seeming to bow towards their master as the tongues of flame are drawn to the divinity in their midst. The Visage of the Flame confers the following capabilities. Shroud of Flames. The angel is surrounded in a nimbus of supernatural flame that distracts and confuses her foes. The difficulty of all ranged or melee attacks directed at the character increase by 1. Immunity to fire. The character suffers no damage from heat or fire. Extra actions. Faith points can be spent to gain extra actions in a turn at the rate of 1 point per action. These actions occur in order of descending initiative, so if a devil with an initiative of 7 gains an extra action, she takes her normal action at 7 and her extra action at 6. The player must decide to purchase extra actions at the beginning of a turn before any other actions have been taken. Improved initiative. Add 2 to the character's initiative score. Torment. As the fallen becomes consumed by her demonic nature, her skin turns black like smoke and seems to seethe with patterns of sullen red that pulse with the demon's beating heart. Her eyes glow like coals and her thick hair writhes in a spectral wind. The Visage of the Flame confers the following high torment capabilities. Claws/teeth. The character manifests claws and fangs that inflict strength +2 aggravated damage. Lashing tail. The character manifests a long reptilian tail tipped with a curved bony spike that inflicts strength -1 aggravated damage. Increased size. The character's body grows to 1/3 again its normal height, adding the following bonus traits. +2 to strength, +1 to dexterity, +1 to stamina. Fiery blood. The character's blood burns like magma. Flammable objects hit with more than a few drops burst into flames, and opponents in close combat suffer 1 health level of lethal damage each time they successfully inflict damage on the character. Alright, extra actions and improved initiative make perfect sense for the ones who conceptualized creation and were the first flames created by the giver. Shroud of Flames also makes sense, but I wouldn't really describe it as such, even though the description is beautiful. Instead, I'd insist more on divine radiant light, which makes the character's location and form difficult to see properly. And immunity to fire is great, but I have questions. See, in a fire, it's usually not the flame itself which kills you, but the smoke, the lack of air, breathing in the toxic fumes released when everything around you is converted into ash and smoke. So are the devils immune to that as well? Well, we're not told, but we can assume so, because otherwise this form feature loses a lot of its charm. But, we have yet another self-contradiction here. If a devil uses the 5th evocation while in their apocalyptic form, can they become fire if they are immune to fire? Let's say yes, but if they are immune to fire, then why does the high torment version burn and hurt them? Since I thought they were immune. Makes no sense. The high torment abilities play into this fiery reptilian demon aesthetic, which can be fun, but it doesn't really make any sense. What would have made more sense from my point of view is precisely this transition from a pure, inextinguishable, divine fire into a corrupted, mundane flame. So low torment Nusku are as bright as stars, right? And high torment Nusku are the fallen flame, which is little more than fire. It needs to consume and destroy. Something like a flame breath, or being able to eat and draw nourishment from anything that is flammable, kind of like the Mumu high torment form does, or having this flame aura that slowly scorches everything around the protagonist every turn. That's also an idea. Anyhow, so this is the point where I usually tell you, and there we have it, the lore of so on and so forth. But I really want to end this episode with a few suggestions for how to homebrew this lore in a way that doesn't make the players completely miserable. And make no mistake, I'm well aware my ideas are not always great, and I'm not in any way saying, oh, I fixed it. But these are versions of abilities I'd implement in my own games to empower the players and give them more. Keep in mind, this isn't homebrew I've actually already spent time on, but more like 5-minute ideas, so take these with a grain of salt. What I'm thinking about is completely scrapping the first dot because it's useless. It does about as much as an oversized windproof lighter, and taking a look at the properties of both mundane and divine flame, while making use of the interesting ideas from the other evocations. What is flame? It is light, warmth, energy. So for the first evocation, which we can call, I don't know, illuminate, why not? The character is able to produce light, warmth, and flames that are not very strong, but can still ignite certain things when used high torment. I'm thinking a character with this ability might conjure these flames from their fingers, mouth, hair, ignite their eyes or fingers like light bulbs, whatever. But the point of this is to radiate light and warmth, which is amazing in cold environments, to emit light, which might not only keep animal predators at bay, but it can be used for signaling. Think of a lighthouse or a flare, right? Light can be used to communicate over long distances in mundane ways. But this very light also reflects how the Heralds banished the darkness. As high torment, devils become like the abyss, dim, cold. They leech off of both light and warmth, which can be used in a variety of offensive ways. I leave up to your imagination. And I think this is very much in step with the apocalyptic form feature, because by repeatedly pulsing intense light, the character might disorient or even hurt attackers. The second dot, which we are going to keep calling Ignite, reflects the Herald's ability to overcharge or burn physical matter of its energy. Anything can be ignited, and what I want to do here is actually to play on the image of flaming sword, right? A figure like Michael carrying a flaming sword. Thus, with this evocation, what is ignited doesn't burn physically, unless the character wants it to, but it becomes a conduit for that divine flame. Anything can be set ablaze in a way that doesn't actually damage the object, whether it's a sword, a bullet, or a roll of newspaper, and then that object is used as a weapon. It transfers the overcharge of energy to whatever is being hit, damaging it in the process. I'm also thinking here about the way the sun radiates energy into everything, right? And as high torment, that energy eats away at the physical vessel which contains it. As such, objects catch fire and burn with a very strong mundane flame, being much more effective at destruction for a shorter time, but at the end of that duration, they turn into ash or simply burn out of existence. So low torment, things ignite without being consumed by the flame, and high torment, it is a fire, which burns things out of existence. For the third dot, we're going to stick with Control Flame, since it's a reasonable ability with a lot of enjoyable and narratively impactful effects. Using this power, the devil might turn a humble candle into a roaring bonfire, or they might prevent a fire. They might fight fires in both urban and wilderness areas, helping creation in the process. What's fun here is that Lightbringers might use this lore to control each other's flames generated by Illuminate or Ignite. So this is really cool, I think. Someone pulls out a flaming sword. The opponent tries not to extinguish the blaze, but to control it into burning its wielder, and the wielder of the blade commands the blaze into remaining loyal and striking true while assuming its apocalyptic form to become immune to their own flame. So you see, it counters the counter. It's got this whole counter of a counter of a counter thing going on. I think it can be very interesting, and there's a lot players can do with this besides conjuring fire to burn off their attackers' faces or set buildings on fire. But I'm also flirting with the idea of changing the very form of the flame, in the sense that maybe a character can use Ignite and Control to create a cube of fire or a sphere of fire. Maybe by using this in conjunction with the first dot, they can have actual flame earring, which burns endlessly without heat, and when they're in need, the character can toss their earring onto the ground and bam, turn it into a wall of flame, or even create a very distinct shape out of fire, like a replica of themselves, a humanoid flame which can distract, scare, or even attack others. For the fourth dot, this is where I'd insert Ride the Flames, allowing the character to become one with flames for a limited time. But this is a flame that doesn't necessarily have to consume anything to stay in existence, and which can travel anywhere at once, regardless of the presence of air. When using air, though, the flame can gain elevation, since fire and heat always go upwards. So this evocation might offer a limited version of flight. I'm also considering the possibility of partially becoming flame, so unlike the first dot, the character doesn't just illuminate or conjure flame, but they actually have flames for hair, for arms, maybe they can breathe fire for up to a limited distance, and so on. For the fifth dot, I'm thinking of taking that energy consumption and transfer to its ultimate level. Not only does that character deal aggravated damage as it burns a living target's stores of faith, unlike Ignite, which can only affect unliving objects, but the devil can also leech and transfer faith. A very interesting idea if you think about it. By leeching enough of a fallen target's faith, they can convert that fallen into a mere human without any usable stores of faith, but they can also fuel another fallen with that faith, like a battery, like a conduit. I see Luciferans using this with great success. You know, your commanding officer is low on faith, so you can transfer him some of your own, while the devil next to you, who knows lore of the Celestials, can empower your superior's evocations to get through a difficult fight. Lovely. For high torment, what I'm thinking is quite extreme, might not be the best of ideas, but I'm thinking the high torment version can drain so much of the target's energy that it completely extinguishes its resonance in creation, without needing to know the target's true name to do so. I think this would create very interesting approaches to combat, combat-oriented characters, and it would create a whole new layer of play when it comes to destruction among the fallen, because the very first Celestials to ignite and limit the giver from the abyss, they are the only ones who can not only kill a target physically in the way the Slayers do, but to completely remove it from creation by extinguishing its energy and resonance, taking it back to the origin of creation, as it were. As for the apocalyptic form, in my book, immune to fire also means immune to asphyxiation caused by fire. So these are my 5-minute ideas, which don't really fix anything, but aim to give suggestions for evocations that are at least more thematically appropriate and in accordance with the lore than the ones we currently have. Flame is not just fire. It can be a sword. It can be dawn. It can be the sun and the stars. It is light of various types and intensities. It radiates pleasant, gentle warmth, or it might burn you into ashes. It can blaze without oxygen. It can burn with oxygen like fire does. It might emit smoke and toxic fumes, or it might not. It is a transfer of energy, or a greedy, ravenous consumption of physical matter which destroys creation in the process. It spreads quickly, it withdraws, it can deceive you. And now I can finally say, and there we have it, the lore of the flame, which is, sadly, the most botched lore in the core book, I think, and the element we have the least amount of explanations for in the other supplements like the Player's Guide or Houses of the Fallen. It's underpowered, poorly written, focused entirely on destruction. This is not a write-up fit for the first divine light, the first thing to have ever emerged from the Giver. So definitely homebrew this and tweak this if you're going to play a Devil of the Flame. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.